ready. We are live and in full effect. You know what I'm saying?
What's up,
Man,
man? Can you
what's
hear
up,
me?
man? How you feeling?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. My headphones ain't working.
Oh,
Um,
oh,
just another day in Iraq, though. You know,
big fun, big fun. You know what I'm saying?
having a great day.
Sand and fun. That's what it is. Sand and fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man. So crazy thing. So I got this. So I got a bunch of these hats, right? So I have like every color that you could probably think of, right?
Yeah.
And so I decided to wear this like cream one today. I don't know how I feel about it. Like for some reason, I feel like maybe it's because the background is white behind me, but it feels like my head is like erased on top. Like like, I don't know. It just feels weird. This cream when I haven't quite figured this one out yet. But it's all good. Anyway, what's up? What's up, y'all? We're going in the chat. That was a random thing to say. See, we got Daryl. Yeah, the idea guy. What's up, big dog? We got yep. What's up? What's up? What's up? Yeah, everybody's here. Hey, so we got a fun one for you today. We got an exciting one that is always the questionable or the challenging or the debatable or the whatever you want to call it. And that's the age old. We are 2023 going into 2024, and we are heading to the presidential election and all of those fun and exciting things. Another 4 years has come around. It is the age-old battle of the fascists versus the Marxists, the alt-right versus the alt-left, the Inquisition versus the anarchy. It's the
Inquisition, huh?
age-old. Yeah, the Inquisition versus the anarchy, as they say, um, is the age-old battle of tradition versus relativism and progressiveness and all of the above. And so we are at that point where I think it's time that we have a conversation about it. You know what I mean? We are coming up on this year. People are starting their campaigns. And needless to say, after the last couple elections, I can imagine that this one may be interesting to say the least, right?
I think this is going to be
Just
one of
from,
the more lively ones that we have, or that we've had
hmm
in the past.
right.
Sorry, sending out the invites, trying to get some people to come by and watch us run our mouths.
Oh yeah, you
I think
good, you good.
I think you got. I think you're going to have. I think you have a lot of people that have a lot of buyer's remorse voting for Biden simply because they didn't want Trump in office. You got, obviously, Trump has a really hardcore fan base. They want to see him be president again just because he's fun to watch. You got a couple good Republican candidates. I had them pulled up earlier. I was trying to get a
Yeah,
good
I pulled
sense
him up too. Yeah.
of who we got. As far as like the Democrats go, I mean, you have Joe Biden. He's going to run again. God bless us. You Christians can definitely pray
There's
for us
actually
on
there, no, no, there's only three. There's actually three Democrats as
yeah,
of right now.
yeah.
There's three
Biden,
Democrats as of right now that are running, and
Robert
that's Biden, obviously going to run again. Robert F. Kennedy, which is interesting. Robert F. Kennedy, which is funny because I didn't necessarily see that coming per se. I knew he was getting involved in some things, but I guess I didn't. I stepped away or whatnot and didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
He's running as a Democrat, but it's interesting that he's running as a Democrat, but a lot of the things that he has kind of backed for a while have actually been more traditional Republican in nature. And so, which is interesting. For example, like one of the biggest ones that he's known for, which is oftentimes more attributed to the conservative side, is like he's very like anti-jab. He's like anti-vax, and he's talked about a lot of those types of things, and he has not been on that type of train. So I thought it was interesting that he would run as a Democrat. I mean, I knew he's a Democrat, but I'm saying like he would run as a Democrat in particular because that's one of the big, dividing things. Like that's usually not the label that you want, especially
Well,
on the liberal side. So
we talked about it before. Moderation. We haven't seen. There's not a lot of moderate people in any government capacity right now. You
right,
have a lot of people that are very polarized, and they're all, running off of one side or the other, and they're either super, super conservative or super, super liberal or woke or whatever you want to call it. And it's gotten to
right,
the point that it's insanity. It's where people are crossing the aisle. I was actually watching
right,
Bill Mayer earlier today. I was watching a little interview he was doing, just talking about how crazy it's gotten. He's like, I can't even be a Democrat anymore. He's like, there's no principles, there's no anything, and
right,
that's walking, and you're not even getting into like the socialism and the neo-communist ideals that
Right.
they're trying to spread. But then you go to the other side of the aisle with the Republicans. The Republicans are so hardcore conservative that they don't want to sit down and have, they don't have a scientific conversation about abortion. They don't want to talk about contraceptives. They don't want to talk about actual, fiscal responsibility. They just keep pointing fingers at everybody. That's what we just saw. What was it, like last week? I think they finally signed. Everybody voted to raise the debt ceiling like we knew they would.
Right.
It's all two wings of one bird. And I think people, maybe this election, we might actually get some type of, if we get moderate candidates, I think it might actually be a good election. Robert F. Kennedy kind of seems like a moderate. I think Ron DeSantis is not as conservative as he has had to portray himself as. And I think we talked about this before. I think he just had to make a bunch of moves to make constituents happy, to change things in his home state, and kind of like, just throw a middle finger up at the government and be like, hey, federal government, you're not going to tell us what to do at the state level. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to come in here and tell us what to do. Nikki Haley, I'm not a huge fan of Nikki Haley. I don't think she's an idiot. I just don't think she's presidential material. Maybe vice president, possibly. She's not the person I'd want to see. Mike Pence, I call him Crazy Mike Pence. I don't think he has any business being in office, to be honest with you. I don't like him. I don't know much about some of these other guys, like Vivek Ramaswamy. No idea. Haven't read up on him yet. Tim Scott, don't really know too much.
He's pretty. Yeah, he's pretty. He's one of those like real label like anti-woke, like heavy anti-woke type cats. You know what I'm saying? He's like anti-woke, like Marxism. He's like, the full board kind of thing. But then because he's, a minority, people are kind of like, oh, okay, what's he talking about? With him being a minority, with him being, brown. People.
He's kind of like a Dinesh D'Souza then.
Yeah, kind of like, kind of in many aspects, yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay. So as it gets closer, I'm definitely gonna have to look up more of these people who I really wanted to see. Two things I wanted to see. I wanted to see a third party really emerge as a heavy hitter. Obviously, I lean way more towards libertarian than to do anything else. I thought last year they had a really good, strong candidate, Jo Jorgensen, extremely smart woman. Degrees. She was the only candidate that didn't have any type of sexual assault leveled against her. And I think had they allowed, if they would have allowed her on the debate stage, she would have absolutely destroyed both President Trump and President Biden, 100%, hands down, without anything. But in the lieu of me getting what I want, which is a third party or 9 parties, I want as many people, I want as many people vying for my vote as possible. I'm a consumer. In lieu of that, what I'd really like to see is I'd like to see the way they did it back, like in the 1800s and stuff like that, and pull a candidate from both sides. I think Ron DeSantis would make a very good president, and I think Tulsi Gabbard would make a really good vice president because she is one of the more moderate Democrats. I didn't see her name pop up, so I don't think she's running this year. Probably after what happened last year, where she basically crushed everybody, and then they just went with that because that was who they were going to go with. I think had she run, things could have been a little bit different. They do have a list of people that who says they're going to run.
Wings are lined up to potentially put in a bid. Yeah,
like Kamala Harris. I don't think I need to say much about that. Let's not do that. Good old Mitch Landrieu from Louisiana. Please God, no. He was an idiot. He was a terrible mayor. City of New Orleans was not better off than what he left it. So just please no, and some of these other people, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, please, people, please, no. She's dumb. She's just not a smart person. Like, please don't. We got a lot going on in the world, and I'd really like for the world to not just descend into madness because we have an idiot in office, and we already have an idiot in office, and it's just not it's not conducive to a good country right now.
Right. So I think here's the thing. So I look at it all like it's like a big, it's what's up, winner, welcome to the party. I think one of the big things that stands out to me is when I look at the political world, when I look at the political picture right now, it's like nobody really knows what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, nobody really is clear on exactly what we're trying to do here. And there's a lot of accusations that are thrown around. Obviously, you look at like for example, conservatives as a whole are broad brushed as fascists, bigots, um, religious, Bible thumping, crazy people, right? They're labeled as that, you know what I mean? But the biggest term right now is fascist, right? Like conservatives are fascists. Ron DeSantis is a fascist. Trump is a fascist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody's a fascist, right? When it comes to the conservative side. Then on the liberal side, on the Democratic side, you have folks that from the conservative to the liberal side, they're being called, Marxists. They're being called, crazy progressives, lefties and leftists and social justice warriors and all of these different accusations of identifying the ideologies, right? But what's interesting is that you never hear anybody really having the discussion about, okay, what exactly do you believe when it comes to this particular policy? What exactly do you believe when it comes to X, Y, and Z? Okay, you support this particular right. What is it specifically that you support about it? Why do you believe in that? You know what I mean? Like, these are the questions that I believe should be asked, because whether you're Republican or whether you're a Democrat, let's get to the bottom of why you believe what you believe, and then make a mutual decision to move forward, right?
Well, that was one of the things I really enjoyed.
But
That was one of the things I really enjoyed about the last elections. Libertarian candidate Jo Jorgensen, when she would talk, she was telling you what she believes in. She's like, I believe in a smaller government. I want to shrink the government. I don't think the government should be controlling everybody all the way down to the state level like they do. They have too much power. She's like, I want to cut taxes, not just taxes for the rich, not just taxes for the poor. She's like, I want to cut taxes because we have a spending problem in the U.S. We get taxed at an unbelievable rate, but the problem is not everybody pays their fair share. It's less than 50% of the country actually pays their federal taxes every year. So that means the burden is on a much lower percentage of people to pay the taxes, and it's mostly the middle class. We get thrashed every year, during tax season. And we had talked about the fair tax, and she had brought up, one of the things she had brought up was the Fair Tax Act. She didn't call it it wasn't called that back then, but, bring up a fair tax system, because even as a libertarian who don't believe in taxes altogether, they're not, true libertarians are not anarchists. They believe in some sort of order. We understand that our world can't function off of no taxes overnight, but, a sales tax would have been a really good way to hey, let's try this out for a year and see how it works. More people have more of their money in their pocket. Right. They're going to spend more money. When you have more money, you spend more money. That's just the way it works. Your economy gets better. You tax people harder, they spend less money, your economy goes down. So maybe the government has more money, but your economy is not moving along. Right. But I like what you said about, I want to know what they actually believe. I want to put them in the corner and be like, hey, what do you really think about abortion? You're on national TV, you're about to run for president. What is your actual belief? Don't quote me numbers. Don't quote me what an expert said. I want to know what you personally believe about abortion. I want to know what you personally believe about separation of church and state. I want to know how you feel about the war in Ukraine, about how you feel about NATO and the UN. Don't give me numbers. Don't give me other experts' names. I said, I want to just tell me how you feel. Right. Tell me how you fucking feel about it. Right. And if you're for it, that's great. Defend your position. If you're against it, great. Defend your position. And that's all I ask from a candidate. Be honest with me. I want to know what I'm buying. I want to know what I'm buying.
So it's so interesting, man, that you brought that up. That's been one of the big pushes with the whole separation of church and state. One of the big issues that's been dividing society right now is the push for adherence or neglecting or rejection of the biblical principles, right? So with the conservative side, they're standing on what is believed to be biblical principle and saying that that's what's fueling a lot of the decisions that are being made from the conservative side, right? And then on the liberal side, with the Democratic side, they're like, well, no, we need to get rid of that, that biblical principles and stuff, that's gone, that's lost. We need to get into a new age, a new, more humanistic, obviously, relativistic mindset of progress. I don't know if you saw recently, they just banned the Bible in this particular school because it was, what was it? It was accused by a student or a parent of being sex ridden or like full of sex or whatever the case is. And so because of that, it was banned from the school. You know, and so, you know, you look at, and then obviously in a more extreme sense, you have like in Korea, they just put an infant and family in prison for life for having a Bible. And so you have this, so you come back to America though, you have this push of, okay, when we talk about separation of church and state, and like people talk about, we need separation of church and state, separate church and state. But separation of church and state in itself was implemented not as a means saying that the church or the biblical principles can't influence decision. It was that you could not establish a state church. The government cannot establish a state church. That's what separation of church and state was established for. Like people misinterpret that, and I think over the years we've added all kinds of different things, saying that, oh, separate church state says, you know, church shouldn't have any influence on government. That's not true at all. The government itself was established on biblical principles, so it's on biblical principle, not an actual religious faction. Because it says you can worship whoever you want to worship, you can believe whatever you want to believe if the principles established have been rooted on a biblical principle, and then that principle, that influence can still stand based off of the principles of society and people, not you don't believe what I believe, so you have to believe this. You know what I mean? That's the difference. So
yeah, no, I 100% hear what you're saying, and you know, I think some people are afraid that we're going to turn this like a theocracy, like they have over in, you know, like Iran or something with an Ayatollah and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think, and like obviously this is like a huge kind of a sidebar discussion that we should have one day about you know, Christianity and the way that it's portrayed,
right,
and the conservatism, and I think I think some groups of Christians, I'm not going to say all Christians, have done a very poor job of proselytating and spreading their message to the point where it's almost become militant, and so the pushback has also become militant. I think you're right. I know you're right that, you know, the country was founded on biblical principles. It wasn't founded on Christianity. It wasn't founded on Judaism. It wasn't founded on anything. But they, you know, obviously the Bible was one of the only books around back in those days. So everybody, you know, they read it a lot. And you get a lot of good moral stories, blah, 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 you know, so on and so forth from it. What my biggest issue, and I talked about this when they repealed Roe versus Wade, right? So the repealing of Roe versus Wade is a huge win for states' rights. All right. We do not want at the state level to have the federal government tell us what we can and cannot do. That's not what we want. We want the states to operate as independently as possible. It's how this country was founded. Strong state governments and a weak, centralized federal government that handles infrastructure and defense. Okay. And obviously it's grown out of proportion. So I think when you know, and I like to use Roe versus Wade as an example because it was so blown out of proportion that people didn't really understand what was going on. So it was a huge win for states' rights. The caveat is if you lived in the South and one of these red states with a conservative Christian government, then you were more than likely going to have these retroactive abortion laws come into play. Now, are they going to stick around forever? No, I don't believe that they are. Or are they right? I don't believe that they are. I think we need to have a much better conversation at the government level about abortion in the future. I'm not gonna use this as a pulpit to speak for or against it. I'm just gonna say we need to have a better conversation about it in the future.
Right.
And I think that alone put a bad taste in everybody's mouth, and it didn't do very much for the cause because nobody wants to sit down and have a damn conversation about it.
Right.
Okay, nobody wants to talk about you know, any of these issues. I mean, we can put abortion aside. They don't want to talk about taxes. They don't want to talk about crime. They don't want to talk about, you know, the rise in single parents raising children, single mothers raising children, multiple kids to women that are under the age of 20, you know, with no father. You know, we're not talking about the real issues that are affecting the country.
Right.
We're not talking about bringing all kinds of crap into our schools that 50 years ago was just completely unheard of.
Right.
You know, our schools are no longer learning places. They're places of indoctrination for whatever that area believes in, whether it's conservative or religious or liberal or woke or what have not. You know, we've turned our children into a battleground.
Right.
So that's something we should definitely talk to the candidates about. Is like, hey, how are we going to get our education back on track? You know, how are we going to put this back in the bag? How are we going to start mending all the division that we've had in this country over the last 12 years, from Obama all the way through now. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Because like we're not doing that well.
Right.
We're not doing that well at all.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's similar to, like, I don't know if I told you, yeah, I think I was telling you about how, when we talked about like integration and segregation, right? We talked about how like the government forced integration, right? And to me, I think that was integration in itself is a good thing. But I think, and that would be progress. But the problem is that when we do that forcefully, you're causing more people. You're going to cause more violence and chaos in many aspects. And I think that that's what's happening in so many spheres, whether it be liberal or it be conservative, is that we are trying to force our agendas on people who simply are just not ready to receive them. You know what I mean? Like you're forcing an agenda on people who simply have been so conditioned and broken and propagandized and everything else that when you're trying. So, for example, I remember a while ago, there was like a policy that made me think about it. There was a policy that was put in place where they would no longer allow like these urban developments to be built around suburban communities, right? So they used to have it where, you had these nice suburban communities, and then they would build these kind of like, lower income urban type building. You would build it in those communities, right? And so there was a law that was put in place, I think, under the Trump era, where they said we ain't doing that no more. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to be bringing these urban developments into the suburban communities because of the oftentimes the negative impact that they have on the suburban community, right? And so that in itself, when you look at from a numbers perspective and statistically, it is proven that when you try to integrate those two different lifestyles and those two different environments, oftentimes there is a dip in, there's a rise in crime or a dip in safety. There's a lot of things that happen in those situations. You have increasing racial issues. You oftentimes have some issues. But the issue was that one ruling, and the thing about it was mutually agreed upon it was mutually appreciated by people who lived in these upper middle class and suburban communities, and they were black, white, Hispanic. All across the board, they were like, thank you, because they're bringing like this urban stuff into the suburban communities that we work to get away from. And so now, unfortunately, but that was translated as a modern day version of like redlining. It was like it was translated as, oh, it's racist because you don't want them black folks coming in these white neighborhoods. And so that's where, unfortunately, we are as a society with all of these issues. These issues are not being discussed from a simple, logical, statistical, like rational position. They're all being discussed from more of an emotional and more of a perceptive position. You know what I mean? And so I think that's one, like you said, Ron DeSantis, is not as conservative and like alt-right as people think he is. I think that you're probably right in a lot of aspects, but I think that, to me, and this is what I was saying about somebody the other day. To me, I was talking to somebody about Ron DeSantis, and I said, to me personally, you were saying, I think you think he'd be a good president. Personally, I think he's a better governor. I don't necessarily say that I don't see him as a president, right? And that's just me personally, right? I think that I think his lane and his it's kind of like, and I use sports as an example, right? So it's kind of like Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving used to play with LeBron, and he was a good number two. He was that number two guy, right? But then he left the team. They won a championship. He left the team to go run his own team. He wanted to be the guy, right? Yeah. The understanding was he wanted to go run his own team. Well, unfortunately, his career has not gone well since. You know what I mean? He has not had much success since. He was very good when he was with LeBron, but then going away from that, he's still very good, but there's something missing to where, to me, that's just how I feel about it. I think I like a lot of the things that he says. I don't like some of the things that he does. I'm definitely not in favor of like the whole banning of the books thing. I'm definitely not on that train. I get where he's coming from when I look at it objectively. I understand what you're trying to do and what you're trying to say. However, I do think that there is a very dangerous line that you walk when you start to get into that removing of information and banning of books. Because you and I both know, studying world governments and history, one of the first things they do to conquer a nation is destroy the books. You know what I mean? Is burn the books. So, so it's just
if you destroy the older information flow 100%, and I agree with you. Like, I know why he did it. I just think he implemented it poorly. You know what I'm saying? It was a good effort, but it was poorly implemented, and you're going to be remembered for that. And there's really, there's no way to really walk it back. But like I said, that's what comes with moderation. And like you were talking about earlier about, people forcing things on other people. That's why we're seeing the pendulum swing again. You know what I'm saying? We've had a very woke few years, okay, and people are just tired of it because it's gotten to the point where it's crazy. You know what I'm saying? And that's what the candidates need to address. Be like, hey, do you really believe in this? Are we going to talk about trans athletes? Are we? Because that's a huge topic across the country right now. There's women that spend their entire lives competing and are getting beat out by men, by biological men. And there's and the justification is like, oh well, I mean that's how they feel. I mean that's cool. You can feel like that in the stands, but biologically you can't compete. Just like you can't compete in a lot of these sports with performance enhancing drugs. Well, your body is basically a performance enhancing drug at a certain point. If you're a high octane athlete, swimmers and runners and stuff like that, it's just proven men are stronger. We have more muscle. That's the way we were made. Right. Okay. Now, are there still going to be women out there that can whoop it on and beat them? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always someone that can out-train you. You know what I'm saying? Talent will only get you so far. Discipline and hard work will take you the rest of the way. However, I don't think that we're doing anything for, young women's mental health if they can, if they have to work from middle school through high school through college to try to compete in the Olympics or something like that, just get beat out by a dude who couldn't make it in his own his own category. So I think that's a very big topic, and I want to know what these candidates actually think about it. I don't want to hear the numbers. I don't care about the numbers. What do you think about it, and what are you going to do about it? You know what I'm saying? Right. How do we find a medium where we can sit down, and we can talk about this stuff and have a discussion about it. Me and you disagree about a lot of things, but not one time have we gotten on the show and just blasted each other because we don't agree. We talk through it. We try to see the other person's opinion, and sometimes we're just going to walk away and we're not going to agree, and that's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world. We'll move on and we'll find something else that we do agree on, or we'll come back and we'll readdress it later. Maybe one of us learns and grows and changes their view because we're adults, and that's what happens. You go out there and you learn things and you eat crow and you change your opinion. But the problem is these candidates, and you brought it up when you were talking about the housing. Moving those developments into the suburbs, immediately it's black versus white. Immediately. And the politicians use that. The politicians have grappled with it. Obviously, the Democrats will say that the Republicans hate black people, hate minorities, hate immigrants. The Republicans will play up to, well, whoever's voting for me is who I'm going to play up to. Obviously, we'd like to have more black and Spanish people vote for us, but at the base of it, we can't get rid of our white constituents. So everyone's playing to a racial card and a political card and a polarized card because they know what works for them. I told you leading up to this election cycle, what are we going to see? We're going to see school shootings. We're going to see an increase in police violence being blown across the media, and we're going to have an increase in LGBTQ activity. And we've had all of that over the last few months over and over and over again. That's what sells. The only thing we're missing is to bring abortion back into it one more time. And once they do that, they'll have the full cycle, and then everybody will be at each other's throats, and stuff like that. I got into a disagreement with a friend not too long ago about guns, talking about, they want better gun laws. And I'm like, so all I said was, hey, what gun laws do you want? What gun laws that we don't have on the books now do you want that will solve the problem? Give me one that you just
feel. Hey, you're breaking up a little bit. Hold on one second. You're breaking up just a little bit. Yeah, you were like getting jumpy or whatnot. I don't want anybody to miss anything.
Damn Iraqi internet. But all I asked was, like, what law do you want to put into effect to fix the problem? Because these candidates will get up there and they'll say that. They'll be like, oh, we need common sense gun laws. What's a common sense gun law? Right. Yeah, what does that mean? Nobody can have a gun. Well, that's like saying if you crash your car, nobody can drive. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like I said, we need to have conversations about this. And these candidates, all of them, you know what? It's like you go back to Donald Trump. Like, hey, man, Donald Trump was fun to watch, but at the same time, like, I kind of feel like we need a president in today's world. You know, I had a great time watching him for 4 years. He was fun, but I don't want a fun guy. I need somebody who can articulate actual things when they get up on
Right.
the pulpit in the state.